From Farmers Insurance, Rod Johnson joins us. First, some supporters to thank, and thank you for listening. This episode is supported by CCW Digital, leaders responsible for operations, information technology, contact centers, customer care, service, and support are invited to register for a free CCW Digital membership. Membership includes networking with 100,000 plus qualified industry professionals, quarterly executive research reports, product matchmaking, and more. Go to ccwdigital.com to join the community. This episode is also supported by the CCW Conference and Expo. The event will empower you to test, learn, and try the next big thing in customer experience optimization. Are you interested in mining data across touch points for personalized and predictive data? Are you trying to integrate your systems to get a more complete view of the customer? Are you figuring out what innovations to invest in? Chatbots, virtual assistants, AI, VR, biometrics, to name a few? Go to callcenterweek.com to register. Rod Johnson joins us and shares that he runs service operations for Farmers Insurance. He says he's responsible for service related to customers' interaction with agents in person, on phones, and digitally. The technology that Rod and his team is building has to address the fact that the brand has to be more cognizant of the fact that customers want more control of the relationship. With an army of 48,000 agents that a customer could rely on for 89 years, the brand realizes that the customer now wants an additional digital layer to offer self-support, which supports the personal service provided in person. The value proposition remains the same: to be a trusted advisor. Rod's just adding tools. Welcome to CX Network on B2B IQ. I'm your host, Seth Adler. Download episodes on cxnetwork.com or through our app in iTunes, within the iTunes podcast app, in Google Play, or wherever you currently get your podcasts. Rod Johnson.
That could be like an old basketball player name, you know?
Yeah.
Are you an old basketball player? No.
I'm old, just not a great basketball
I got
player.
you. I had you at old, is what it is.
Right.
All right. So we are farmers.
We are farmers.
Dum, 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 dum.
You got it exactly right.
Yeah.
Most people don't get it right.
Yeah. I am all about sound, right? So this speaks
So it
to me.
resonates for you.
Absolutely. And plus you've got that actor, from he's been in so many different things,
He's
and I love him.
isn't
right?
he? The professor.
Yeah.
Professor Burke. That's what we call him.
I gotcha. He's got letters for his name or something like that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to look that up, I guess. But you guys all of a sudden have this brand, right? I remember the insurance brands, and then I don't know when it was, but recently Farmers was huge. What am I missing?
Well, for one thing, we're one of the largest insurers and have been around for about 89 years.
Right.
So we've been around forever.
Sure.
Right. And we've been one of the biggest forever. I think the brilliance was in our recent ad campaign, which really helped. There's kind of that clickiness of the bump, 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 bump. I think it resonated with people.
Yeah.
And if you watch the commercials, they're hard not to pay attention to and enjoy, and especially the latest ones where they're actually showing claims that we've actually written, which are pretty interesting.
We were there. We covered it.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm like literally, I guess, your target market because I'm seeing all the ads.
That's right.
And I'm remembering them.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we want to hear.
That's it. You're not responsible for those, though.
No, I'm not.
What are you responsible for?
I run operations. I run our service operations. So everything related to the Farmers brand, when you look at customers and agents that act on behalf of farmers, I handle all the service for those groups.
In person, on the phone, and otherwise.
Well, my teams do that, right?
Sure.
So the number of them that I get to talk to, but in person and on the phones.
All right. So what are we hearing?
We're hearing that, first off, customers are changing in how they want to do business with us. They want a little bit more control. They want a little bit more self-service. So the technology that we're building has to address a little bit more of that. We have to be a little bit more cognizant of the fact that they want to control a little bit more of the relationship. As an 89-year-old company, we've done business a certain way for quite some time, and our predominant distribution channel and customer engagement effort has been through our agents. We have 48,000 agents, whether they're exclusive agents or independent agents. Think independent contractors that have been the predominant distribution channel for us for all those years. So now the customer is saying, hey, that's great, and I want them there when I have important needs and I need a trusted advisor.
Mm-hmm.
But I also want to be able to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and check my bill, or I want to do something when I want to do a little bit of research, and then maybe I'll call them. And so that's a little bit different than where we've been over the years.
And how long have you been there?
11 years.
So when did that kind of change start to happen, or was it constant change?
It's been constant. It's kind of a slow drip, right?
Mm-hmm.
So insurance is one of those products that's probably a little bit more difficult for people to understand. And so we still believe our value proposition is a trusted advisor.
Mm-hmm.
We just think that our customers more and more are increasingly more adept at finding information that they need. And we'll look that up, and then they want the hard stuff to be done by their agents.
Got it. All right. So we kind of have to have a panacea, if you will.
Right. Absolutely.
How did you get into this whole thing? Where are you from?
So I come from Arizona, but I'm an old school operations guy. So
Okay.
as I was going into my undergrad work,
Where was that?
In a call center at Arizona State University.
Okay, go Sun Devils.
Go Devils.
Yeah.
That's right. Fork 'em. Right. So I was going to Arizona State University thinking I was going to graduate in psychology, and I did graduate in psychology. I wanted to counsel. Took a class my senior year that changed that completely, decided not to counsel, and was loving this new leadership role that I had taken on working for an airline.
What class was it?
It was deviant behavior.
Wait. So now here's the thing about Arizona State University, a renowned party school. They have this course called Deviant Behavior, and it changes your life. You
Yes.
can't make it up, Rod.
I didn't want to counsel if I had to deal with deviant behavior, so that was it.
It was one step too far,
That's
is what you
right,
were saying.
that's right.
I see. And then,
Exactly.
so which way did you go?
So I went to org behavior into business and loved being in a supervisory and a manager role with an airline at the time,
Okay.
leading people. And it was in big operations like I lead now,
Yeah.
and I've stayed. I love it.
Wait, so you were leading people right off the bat? Here's this new kid on the block, and he's already got a team, or how did
Well,
it?
I was on the phones first,
Uh-huh.
and I was going to school. And while I was going to school, I took a supervisor job. And as I was completing school, a manager job came up, so I took that, and it just snowballed from there.
All right. Agent, supervisor, manager.
That's
What
right.
did you have to learn to just get to manager?
You just had to learn how to be successful through people. You had to lead them.
What does that mean?
It means that you had to, one, exemplify great behavior. You had to follow up with people. You had to talk to them. You had to show them what you wanted to see happen. You need to show them how to do it. And then you had to manage it. You had to lead it.
That sounds so tiring.
It's so great, isn't it?
How do
lot
you
of fun.
not get bogged down in the fact that here's some folks that don't want to go along with you? You know?
You have to figure out how they can want to go along with you. I mean, the trick to leadership is helping people understand why it's a great thing to follow you.
Give us an anecdote from the early days, if I can put you on the spot.
Yeah. So we had a great story here. It's a key learning experience for me. Is the first job I took on, it was over a team that I used to work with. So I was part of the team. Then they promoted me to be over the team.
And we used to like Rod, and now he's
That's
managing
right. Now
us.
he's
and
my
we,
boss,
We
right?
don't like him anymore.
Exactly right. So I got this challenge the first day, and they said, look, we've got some budget cuts coming up. We need you to reduce your handle time. In call center, that's the amount of time you're speaking. We need you to reduce it by 25%. Can you do it? And I'm like, absolutely, I can do it. So I took this on, went to my team and said, go team, let's go do this, right? Let's get everybody together. Can we all agree that we can do things 25% more efficiently? Everybody agreed. They wanted to do it for their new boss, that kind of thing. So we did it. We got all these accolades for being able to accomplish the goal. Then we get our sales stats the next month, and we had dropped by about 45%.
Oh, wait a second.
Because in the airline industry, when you're booking reservations, the sell comes at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are watching their clock and they're working through trying to do it faster, a lot of times they'll miss the sell at the
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, you're all set. Thanks.
end. Got you, right? It changed completely how I looked at development and behavioral development of how to work with your people and help them get better.
But you had done that. You know, I kind of poked fun at you. They used to like you, and now they didn't. But so you had worked through that, which was difficult. You
That's
actually
right.
got them to say yes to the 25%.
That's right.
And then the information, the learning for you came with the down 45%.
How you do it,
Oh
right?
no!
25% is less important than how you get there.
There
and
we
how
go.
You're more efficient.
And so, what did you?
Absolutely.
Now you call everybody back.
Yeah, we get back, we sit down. So then we started to dissect. All right, now where are areas that we can appropriately lose time, right? and still maintain the level of sales that we need to have.
Right. When you say you have to exemplify it, how many fingers did you point at yourself as far as
completely took full ownership?
Right. Yeah.
Had to.
Yeah.
It was my issue, right? I mandated it. They did it. They did exactly what I asked. The ask wasn't clear.
There we go. And then do you have the next set of numbers? Were we able to increase sales?
Okay. Absolutely. We were very successful thereafter, and it's been a story that I tell in every leadership role that I have, particularly as businesses have gotten better about behavioral development instead of managing metrics and managing numerics, right? And that's a key. It was a key learning for me early on, and it's something that it comes easy now because I don't want to get back there again. I don't want somebody to say, "Hey, you lost your effectiveness by 50% because you gained a little bit of efficiency."
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense
if you see it in the numbers.
That's right.
Yeah. So okay, we're going along fine here. The airline was.
It was America West Airlines.
And how long were you there?
I was there for 12 years.
Through how many acquisitions?
At that point, none.
Okay.
No, they were independent. Now, it was through a Chapter 11 and other things that occurred throughout that period of time.
Wait a second. So they went into Chapter 11.
It was post-deregulation, and finances were hard, and competition was tough. They had that little airline called Southwest Airlines that shared the same airport, and shared a lot of their customers, right?
Bye-bye.
That's right. So we ran into some patches, went into Chapter 11, then came back all the stronger and grew from there.
Okay. But when did you leave? Before U.S. Air? Or,
I left before U.S. Air.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And where'd you go?
Yeah, I left and I went to AOL.
But why would you do that if, you love the thing and everything's great and I'm from Phoenix anyway, right?
Technology.
Okay.
It was shiny.
Okay. Oh, here's the shiny bright object.
That's right.
I want to be over there.
There's this new company that calls and they said, "Hey, listen, we're creating an operation very similar to what you're doing now, but it's with a technology company."
Now, did you have to go to, what was it, Virginia for the headquarters?
I initially had to move to Oklahoma City.
Oklahoma City.
So the first question the recruiter asked me was, "How do you feel about Oklahoma City?" I don't.
Yeah, I don't have
Not
any
really
opinion.
Sure how I feel about
right.
it.
Yeah.
Never been there, never seen it.
This is before, the kind of this is before the kind of terrible happenstance that they had before, certainly before the basketball team.
It was the same year. The year that I went was the same year that the football team won the national championship. The first year that Bob Stoops got there, and ironically, the year that the F5 tornado went through and took out a huge portion of the city.
Okay.
So my timing was not great.
No, I would imagine some people, sitting there might think, well, what's this Rod character? All of a sudden.
What he brings.
Yeah. But what did you bring, I guess? What were they doing, and what did you know, and what didn't you know, and all that?
Yeah, so I had the opportunity to go and lead a sales team that was doing retention sales for AOL. And so what that meant was, a customer signed up for AOL, their AOL account. They paid a fee every month because back then the internet wasn't free.
No, it wasn't.
Right? So they paid a fee.
Well, it was, but AOL had figured out the trick before anybody else did.
They figured out how to monetize it before anybody else,
That's
right?
it. And I gotta log on and go to click on my boxes for this and that.
All this wonderful content that they would get when they got in there. So what we needed to do was, when they were calling to cancel, is help them understand why there was value in that $19.95 a month or whatever it was, how the value they received for it was beyond what they had to pay. So that was the responsibility of my team, is to do that, is to talk people into staying.
So I guess hindsight being 20/20, it wasn't. Right. So what were the arguments at the time?
So at the time, it actually was, because the properties that AOL owned or that they jumped off to saved people money. Right. There were coupons they could do. Now you've got things like Groupon and other things that people use. They didn't exist back then.
Right.
So all of those kind of spun off later. But at the time, you could far exceed the value that you were paying by virtue of using the properties that existed within AOL.
When did that change, and were you still there?
I stayed for about 8 years.
Okay.
And so I got to see sort of the rise and a little bit of the crossover of the .com or the bust of the .com, right?
We started to dip, so to speak.
That's right. So we got in about 6 years into my stay there. The model started to change a little bit. That's when AOL acquired Time Warner. Another one of those acquisitions that looks a little bit different from the outside than it was from the inside.
What did it look like from the inside? Because I was a stockholder at the time, which didn't go well for me. But how did it go for you?
Right.
What was? happening?
So the acquisition was really interesting because it was this little company that could, right? A bunch of really innovative, exciting. I mean, to this day, some of the most exciting people I've ever worked with. Really innovative, truly understood consumers more than I think others that are in industry today. But they acquired Time Warner thinking, what a great opportunity to take all of this amazing content and push it through internet pipes, right? Now, if you look at delivery models today, companies are doing it now.
Yeah.
In fact, there was a recent acquisition that companies are doing this now. It might have just been a little bit before the time.
Oh, it definitely was. So they were right, but they were like 20 years too early.
Right. That's right.
So what didn't work? What was it? Why were they 20 years too early?
I don't know. I think it's just consumer adoption. It's like any other kind of technology. It takes the consumer to be willing to adopt, right? And I think that you had the hardcore adopters that did, and I just think the rest of the community, it took longer.
Yeah. Steve Case.
Brilliant.
Did you have the opportunity to be in the same room with him at all?
Once or twice. Yeah, I didn't. He would not be able to pick me out of a crowd. Wouldn't know me, but I got to be in the room with him. And just brilliant. I'm one of these guys that you would follow. He got it.
I don't know if you can remember quotes, but I'm sure you remember a style of thinking. What was it?
There weren't boundaries. There was everything. Always had. You could always expand on an idea. Right, and even to the way that the corporate headquarters was set up, it was all around innovation. I mean, there's a lot to be said now about open environments and collaborative environments and having, marker boards everywhere and shared space so that people will ideate and collaborate. Right, we have did this back then.
We have to create opportunities for collisions.
Exactly,
Raj.
That's exactly right, and that's what the mindset was back then. I mean, I remember in some of the conference rooms in headquarters, they actually were made up of, or they were lacquered with the old AOL CDs that used to be carpet bombed to the world, right?
So many. I got so many in the mail, Rod. I got so many of them.
I still have one that has Irvin Magic Johnson on it with his signature, right?
There you
go. They were brilliant, but the tables would be made of those things. It was really interesting.
Amazing.
But it was just a really, really open, collaborative, creative environment. Something that was really fun.
So basically you're describing today's work environment at tech companies. It was happening then.
Absolutely right. And there were some tech companies. I mean, Google was doing it back then, right? They were at the very early end of it. But they were doing it back then. But it was a really cool environment to be in. Kind of heady stuff.
Do you remember any quotes? Do you remember anything else?
I don't remember any quotes. I just remember
no boundaries.
No boundaries. Yeah, there's just this approach that you got to keep thinking about this. There are different things you're missing in this, in how you're looking at it.
Huh. Which he couldn't convince the rest of the world after the Time Warner acquisition. He's like, come on, just keep thinking about it.
I would still read any book that he wrote just because it was really fun.
All right. So that was fun, and this was great. But we're starting to see a little bit of a dip maybe. You mentioned Google. Of course, that changed everything.
Absolutely.
Where did you go?
So I had – after that, the model changed. And it was the very end of my 8 years there. The model shifted from a subscription model, fee-based model, to a free model. So that changed the retention effort that I was leading. And I had a region of operations that I was working with that I was leading back then. It changed the dynamic completely, and it changed the number of the number of heads you needed to have to do that work, number of employees that you needed. So it greatly reduced. They were doing significant reorganizations, and I had a number of employees that got caught up in those reorganizations, and so had the opportunity at that point to either transition back into corporate headquarters or to maybe look for something else, and chose the opportunity got a phone call from a recruiter. As I was in the decision-making process, said, have you ever considered the insurance industry? I'm like, no. Right? My father was an insurance agent, and no, I've never considered that, actually.
Just like it's the Oklahoma City of industries.
That's right.
For you.
Yeah. So I was with an airline which was pretty heady, tumultuous stuff, right? Because the industry was turbulent. And then I got into tech. Tech was turbulent. There was it was heady, fun stuff, but it was turbulent.
Right.
The next step logically wasn't necessarily financial services or insurance, but they were building an operation that was similar to the ones that I had done at AOL, and I thought, this might be the right time to do something that feels more stable, that looks a little bit different than some of the some of the industries that I've been in, and so I took it.
Right.
I had the opportunity to build an operation in Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, actually in Olathe, and started with farmers then.
Yeah, it's not Olathe.
It's Olathe,
yeah,
right?
It's Olathe. Because whenever I see that, I'm like, Olathe. No, Olathe.
It's Olathe.
Yeah, the Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas thing. It's right on the border there, isn't it?
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
How did you like Kansas City?
I didn't think I'd like it much. I loved it. Great place to live.
Yeah.
Great place to live.
Good
Great sports town.
That's what I was going to say. Baseball. They love the baseball team. They love the football team.
And while I was there, neither of those teams were very good.
Right.
They've both been good since, but neither of them were very good when I was there, and they were a lot of fun.
You might remember Christian Okoye at running back.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
For the Kansas City.
Yeah, he actually came out to our office and did an autograph signing there. So he was cool.
So this was Farmers.
This was Farmers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this was before the advertising campaign, so you couldn't know who they were, right?
Didn't know them well.
What did you find out? How did you get to know them well? What were they good at?
But I'll tell you something if I can jump back a little bit to the AOL experience. My first experience in AOL was that tornado that went through the Oklahoma City area.
Mm-hmm.
And it took out a mile-wide swath in Moore, Oklahoma. And I had a number of employees that lost their homes in that tragic tornado.
Yeah.
So we were out. I took my team out, and we were helping to do the cleanup a couple of days after that, just as sort of a team event and to try and support our team members.
Of course.
And as we were cleaning up, it's really, really hot. The devastation is just unbelievable.
I mean, I remember seeing it on TV. It's just terrible. Yeah.
Incredible to be standing in the middle of it and looking. I can't judge distance because there was nothing to judge it by. But there was this mobile home that was had a line of people outside of the mobile home and a big satellite dish on top. And it was a Farmers Insurance mobile claims unit that was feeding and giving water to people that were in the community. And come to find out, Farmers had a massive operation in the same business complex that AOL was housed in Oklahoma City. And so I had the opportunity. There was sort of, my insurance company's not out here.
Right.
There's a major event, and these guys are out here serving the community, not just Farmers customers, but the community. Major event. And I sort of just made this mental note that interesting, because my company's not out there.
Right.
They are, and it's not even about their customers. It's they're serving the community.
Yeah.
So there was kind of in the back of my head, it's just like, okay, that's interesting. That was Farmers. Then get the call about 8 years later, and it was about Farmers. It's like, okay, I probably wouldn't have considered going into the insurance industry if it wasn't for that experience with them 8 years before.
Immediately remember the truck.
Absolutely right.
Amazing. And so what were they good at? Obviously being present, being community minded and being community oriented. What else, though, in terms of operations?
So there are two things that struck me then when I first started with them. One, the claims operation is phenomenal, right? So there really, truly is a focus on getting customers back to normal after whether it's a small accident or whether it's a tragedy. There's a focus on that, right? And so the service in a claims type of a situation was beyond belief. And so that was really notable to me from the first day that I started.
Can you give us a sense of how I trust you, of course, that you that this was the case? How so, but beyond the truck being there, right?
The focus and seeing the deployment and seeing when something happened, how they got people to, not even in claims, but to get them out into the community to help rebuild. Mm-hmm. We've had 3 different community build back efforts in major types of catastrophic situations, one of which was Joplin, where a huge number of our employees, including myself, got to go out and help rebuild the community as a company-sponsored event, right? This is not something that it wasn't because of a claims effort. This was just a company focus on getting people back because they felt like that was tightly aligned to what we did as an organization, right? And so it's that kind of mentality. Now, that wasn't a claim necessarily, but it's a mentality in how Farmers went about getting their customers back to where they were before.
Why not let the philanthropy course through the capitalist veins?
Yeah, right, exactly right. Well, you could, but I think that the idea was help your employees understand how important all of this is. So when they're dealing on a one-to-one basis with somebody that's had some kind of a loss, that empathy is there, right? I mean, it stuck out to me 8 years later, and that's one of the reasons I joined Farmers. So that was the first thing is really the focus on claims. The second part is just how good our agents are at being that trusted advisor.
Right.
And I think it's really powerful to have independent contractors basically that are doing that work, and I get to support them, right? My role is to support them in the work that they do. But as good as they are at making sure that they are being that trusted advisor to the customer, and that's just really powerful to me because that's what the customers need. That's what I need. I'm pretty adept at my financial services, at my insurance. I still use an agent, and I still use their advice.
Yeah. Well, that might be somewhat because you're Gen X like me, right?
That's right.
Because we're used to talking to people.
That's exactly right.
So which brings us to the panacea, right?
Yeah.
We've got the agent, and I'm sure we've also got the bots on the
Sure.
front end, right?
Sure.
How is it working? And describe the kind of way that you look at the operation.
Yeah, so we are watching a changing dynamic in our customer base, and I'm watching a changing dynamic in my employees that is very, very similar, right? Mm-hmm. And it's this desire to be empowered to do more on their own, mm-hmm. as opposed to have to be beholden to somebody else to do it on their behalf, right? I see it with our customers. They want to be able to check 24/7 the status of things, right? So earlier last year, we rolled out a mobile claims app, which enabled them to initiate a claim in real time. So they're standing in front of a car that they've got an accident. They're taking pictures and they're inputting all of that to initiate a claim in real time, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's very different than the old days where you got back to your office, you called somebody,
right.
started a claim, you spent 30 minutes on the phone giving them the statement, right? Yeah. So now it's in real time. And so that it's really, really changed the dynamic of how the customer works with us. But they also want to now look at it afterwards and say, okay, did it get input right? So they can go on and look at the status, and mm-hmm. they can look at what work has been done. They want to know where they are in the process. That's different than what customers have done before. And in the past, they would just pick up the phone. Hey, where are we with this? Mm-hmm. Not anymore. They don't want to call anymore.
Right. Well,
right?
Not for that.
Not for that.
Yeah.
They want to call for the higher order, really difficult stuff, mm-hmm. right? Or when things go bad, they want to be able to call.
So you're, thankfully, at this kind of high level position. What do you think the industry does understand? What do you think the industry doesn't understand? Mm-hmm. We've been talking about farmers. Industry-wise, as far as just customer management is concerned, what do we get? What do we not get?
I think that we still don't quite – I think we haven't cracked the code on disrupting ourselves to hand the tools back to our customers. Or to hand the control back to our customers or to our employees, right? Empowering them with tools that let them do things on their own as opposed to building in hierarchies or second-level decision-making. I think if we're addressing what our customer base looks like and if we're addressing what our employee base looks like now, it's giving them the tools to do it themselves and not building in hierarchies and approvals and all these extra steps that maybe we can manage on the back end using technology,
right,
and give them tools to do things in real time. So I think that's probably the thing that we have not done enough in customer service as an industry is disrupt ourselves, and do things in a way that hands tools back.
How do we keep, though, the process excellence if we get rid of all of the rule sets that make us go?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and that's the balance that we have to achieve, right? It's figuring out those transactions that are easily managed at an aggregate level, and say, what is our level of acceptability in terms of percentage of quality, and if that threshold is high enough, then we can say, well, why don't then we just audit it on the back end, and if we ever see a problem, then we can start instituting more, process against it. But let's not process things that we don't need to.
Let's not process things to a halt.
Right, exactly right. And I think that's too often there's comfort in building in process. I get that, mm-hmm. right? I'm a process guy too.
Yeah.
And there's comfort in that. But we have to hold ourselves back and let process happen and then audit it on the back end. And then when there's issues, dive in, man, fix it. But but you don't have to over-engineer it from the beginning.
On the way in.
Right.
What are you most excited about?
So I love technology, and some of the technologies that I'm seeing come out, you mentioned some of them with bots, et cetera. I love when you can have technology that doesn't change the customer experience level, it only enhances it, but takes steps out of process, mm-hmm. right? So when I look at the things that we can do in chat and the delivery systems that we have through mobile texting and in chat, things that we can deliver back and forth, the communication that we can do, and then the artificial intelligence you can apply and the bots you can apply mm-hmm. in those transactions is so powerful Doesn't change the end result customer experience except for to the better, but it takes steps out of the process and cost out of the process.
So taking steps out of the process, taking costs out of the process, all this sounds good. We're automating the stuff. We believe in the bots. You mentioned this finicky relationship that we have with our great agents, right?
Yeah.
How does this, where does the line end and what happens with the agents? And as we automate our way through here, what's going to happen, Ron?
Yeah, I think, well, great question, right? And I don't see any risk with them. What I see is streamlining their processes too. I mean, they're beholden to the same process that we build. It only streamlines what they're able to do as well, right? So if you can take steps out of their process, then they can spend more time in their relationships with their customers. They can spend more time selling to their customers. They can spend more time advising why some financial instruments make more sense to certain customers. Right now, if they're bogged down with process, that's less time they have doing those other business building things or relationship building things.
Human things,
right?
That's
the value proposition anyway, is what they bring to the customer is that advice. It's not the process stuff that they do. And the more I burden them, or the more that we burden them with extra steps, the less time they spend doing that with people.
If Rod was going to ASU in the fall, now, what advice would you give young Rod as far as education is concerned? Because if you're saying the trick for jobs in the future is, and I think I might be putting words in your mouth, is being human, what would you go for? What would you do? What would you, what's the trick to employment and jobs in the future here?
Yeah, so I would tell myself, if I were giving advice, I would say, and this is advice that I give to my son who's jumping into school here pretty soon.
All right.
Is embrace technology. Focus on the enabling things, right? Focus on the things that enable and things that will disrupt industry. Focus on those things, understand them, embrace them, and push, right? Use them.
Mm-hmm.
And then take the other side of it and understand everything that makes people want to do business with you. Understand the customer aspect of it and really dig deep into the relational aspect of things, but understand how those things are married and not how they're separate, right? Don't focus on human capital as important human capital, but leverage technology so that you're enabling that human capital. And I think that's the part that I didn't get, right? I think that you either went a technical track and you spent time looking at technology, but you weren't people focused, or you went into the social skills types of stuff and you didn't look at the technology piece.
That's it.
And the fact is, you got to have them married, and you have to use, and they're empowering to each other.
Mm-hmm. I think you and I had similar paths at that fork in the road. It's like, well, I'm not good at that stuff, so I guess I'll only do this stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So and does he know where he's going?
Yeah, he's going to be going to Northern Arizona University.
Okay. All right.
Close to a ski resort.
I
think
see.
there was a sales pitch there.
I see how that goes. Fair enough. All right. So I've got 3 final questions for you.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what they are. I'll ask you them in order.
Okay.
What's most surprised you at work along the way? We just kind of talked about your various stops. What's most surprised you in life? And then on the soundtrack of Rod Johnson's life, one track, one song that's got to be on there. But first things first. What's most surprised you at work?
Oh, let's see. So people have surprised me at every turn, right? And I've surprised myself a little bit as I've evaluated people, right? As a leader, you're constantly sizing people up and figuring out ways to get the best out of them, right? People have constantly surprised me. They've got more than I initially thought they would give, right? I'm total theory Y, right? I don't fall into the Theory X style of leadership. If you remember some of your old business books,
give us the
Y, right?
Yeah, give us the Cliff's Notes.
So Theory X is people are inherently lazy, right? You have to whip them and manage them for them to be able to do the work.
Okay.
Theory Y is exactly the opposite. That people want to do well, you just got to give them the tools. I believe people want to do well, you just have to give them the tools. But I've been consistently surprised at every stop that people can give more than you assume at first. And so what that's taught me is you got to push and you got to ask.
Interesting. You got to push and you got to ask.
And you got to ask. And maybe not in that order. Maybe you ask and then you push. But they can give you more than a lot of times they even know they can. And you just have to enable it.
I more of a Theory Z guy, which is never believe in binary theories.
I love that. That's wholly appropriate. There was actually a book called Theory Z as well.
Oh, was there?
Yeah, there was.
Look at that. He stole my idea, that guy.
It was a good one.
Yeah, he stole the idea that I just had right now.
Yeah.
What's most surprised you in life?
That challenge breeds opportunity.
How
right?
so?
So with the dot-com bust and some of the challenges in working through that, opportunity came out of it, right? And a mindset and an openness to do something different came as a result of those hard things. Some of the experiences I had with AOL early on were things that I would look back and never want to have to go through again.
Sure.
But it makes the things that I go through now not insurmountable. Right. So
That's
there were if you recall years ago, there were some issues with AOL and the retention policies, and there were some class action lawsuits about keeping people on the books that shouldn't have been very, very Wells Fargo-esque before Wells Fargo time.
Right.
And I had to lead through some of those things and spent some time sitting in front of attorneys and commissions and answering as to what our strategy was to pull us out of that problem.
Yeah.
And they set me up to feel like nothing is insurmountable now.
Because it was nearly impossible, and you simply got through it. Is that what it is?
Yeah, we got through it. We
Right.
worked through it. And we were successful through it. And so, when you look at those things in comparison, everything else is doable.
That's it. I mean, when I've had my brushes with tough times, and I guess in retrospect, what I would say, certainly not in the moment, but in retrospect, I am thankful, and I should have been thankful in the moment, although you don't have time to be.
No.
Because that's where you're building. That's where you're learning. That's where you're
right.
growing.
That's exactly right.
On the soundtrack of Rod Johnson's life.
Am I giving you a song and a band?
Yeah, so it's one track, one song that's got to be on there. It doesn't have to be your favorite song. It doesn't have to be the perfect song. But as you've gone here, this is one of the songs that's certainly on the soundtrack of Rod Johnson's
It's
life.
got to be something by the Foo Fighters.
Okay. So are you doing what's the hero thing that
Hero's
they have?
good, but
right.
that's not my favorite one. But there's got to be something by the Foo Fighters.
All right, just the
There's some
catalog.
optimism and there's some fun in their music that the one thing that is true about me in my career is I have a heck of a good time.
Yeah.
And whether it's working with people or whether we're working with technology or whatever, I have a heck of a good time. So anything that sort of suggests some energy and some fun, that's got to be on my soundtrack.
And it kind of plays into what we were just saying in that, sadly, Kurt Cobain, did commit suicide. But without that happening, you don't get the Foo Fighters.
That's absolutely right.
You know
Dave
what I mean?
Grohl is still in Nirvana.
Yeah,
You don't
exactly.
get the
Just
brilliance
drumming
that
away.
is the Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
That's right. That's a good point. I like that.
There you have it. There you have it, Rod. That's why I do what I do. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
I can't wait to check in with you down the line. How about
Absolutely. Same.
And there you have Rod Johnson. He was on the phones, going to school, took a supervisor job, and was completing school. A manager job came up, and it just snowballed from there. So, very much appreciate Rod's time. He had a bunch to share. Really good thoughts and learnings from him. Appreciate you and your time. Stay tuned.